The tension in the room was palpable, a silent hum beneath the polite smiles. Sarah's colleague had just taken credit for her months of tireless work, a blatant betrayal. Her jaw tightened, her hands clenched under the table, but her face remained impassive. She offered a strained smile, a quiet acknowledgement, and then retreated, the fury coiling deep within her, unexpressed, unacknowledged. This profound emotional repression, this disciplined act of keeping powerful feelings locked away beneath a calm exterior, often begins as a protective shield. We learn to swallow insults, to stifle tears, to bury rage, believing it keeps us safe, strong, in control. But what happens to the force that's contained, the pressure that builds with nowhere to go? This deceptive stillness, this immense power held in check, echoes through the murky waters of ancient swamps. Imagine the alligator, a primal leviathan, floating almost imperceptibly on the water's surface, appearing utterly inert, an ancient log. Yet, beneath that unmoving facade, immense power lies coiled, every muscle ready to explode with terrifying force at the precise moment its boundaries are crossed. Its stillness is not passivity. It is a calculated containment, a strategic buildup of unreleased energy. But what are the true costs when human emotions are similarly held captive, when inner turmoil is masked by outward calm? When does the instinct to repress become a ticking time bomb? And what devastating force is unleashed when the contained finally overflows, breaching the surface with an unexpected, often destructive, ferocity? Mark listened, his face a mask of polite indifference, as his boss delivered yet another unfair critique, undermining his efforts in front of the whole team. A searing heat flared in his chest, a primal urge to shout, to defend himself, to challenge the injustice. But he simply nodded, muttered an apology, and walked away, the words, the accusations, the raw fury, all swallowed down, forced deep beneath a calm, composed exterior. Later, at home, a simple misplaced item would trigger a disproportionate outburst of irritation at his family. This pervasive suppressed anger wasn't gone. It was simply redirected, an internal poison slowly eroding his peace, manifesting in subtle, often inappropriate ways. He longed to express himself directly, to stand up for himself, but the ingrained habit of containment kept him silent, a simmering volcano beneath a frozen lake, waiting for an unsuspecting trigger to erupt. This pervasive suppressed anger, a coiled power beneath a calm exterior, finds its most potent metaphor in the alligator's hidden fury. Alligators are masters of stealth and patience. They can remain almost perfectly still for extended periods, partially submerged, their eyes barely breaking the water's surface, appearing utterly placid. This stillness is not a sign of meekness, but of immense, controlled power. Beneath that serene facade, their immense jaws, muscular tail, and powerful body are primed for a sudden explosive strike. They don't waste energy on idle aggression or constant displays of dominance. Instead, they conserve their raw power, allowing their fury to remain hidden, building in potential, ready to be unleashed with devastating force only when their territory is invaded. Their young threatened or prey comes within reach. Their motionless state is a calculated containment of formidable strength, a testament to the devastating potential of unreleased, focused aggression. The human experience of suppressed anger directly mirrors the alligator's hidden fury. In human neurobiology, anger, when consistently repressed, can lead to chronic activation of the sympathetic nervous system, increasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, even if outwardly calm. The amygdala, the brain's emotional center, continues to process the perceived threat or injustice, but the prefrontal cortex actively inhibits its outward expression. Psychologically, suppressing anger often stems from a fear of conflict, a desire for social approval, or a belief that anger is inherently bad or destructive. Evolutionary psychology suggests that while direct aggression can be dangerous, a measured, controlled response can be adaptive. However, chronic suppression becomes maladaptive, leading to passive aggression, resentment, anxiety, and even physical health issues like high blood pressure. Just as the alligator holds its immense power in deceptive stillness, a person suppressing anger lives with a coiled, unexpressed force, prone to an explosive, disproportionate release when their emotional boundaries are finally breached. Mark felt the simmering rage beneath his calm facade, the quiet agony of unexpressed frustration. He was confronting the immense personal cost of this pervasive suppression, the way it corroded his relationships and left him feeling powerless. Would he continue to swallow his anger, allowing it to poison him from within and erupt in misplaced bursts? Or would he, like an alligator whose patience eventually leads to a decisive, controlled strike, dare to express his anger directly, assertively, and constructively, risking the discomfort of confrontation for the sake of his own peace and integrity? His instinct was to contain, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. But the profound internal pressure, the yearning for genuine self-expression, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. He had to acknowledge that his suppression was not just protecting him, but also slowly destroying him. The alligator's hidden fury and deceptive stillness offer a powerful metaphor for the human struggle with suppressed anger. It teaches us that while emotional control can be valuable, an unchecked habit of internalizing rage can lead to profound psychological and physical harm, often resulting in explosive and misdirected outbursts. By understanding the primal power that drives the alligator's contained aggression, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own emotional repression. May we learn from the alligator to discern when our silence is strategic and when it is becoming a destructive habit, and to understand that true strength lies not in the absence of anger, but in the courage to acknowledge process and express it constructively, transforming a coiled thread into a force for healthy assertion and self-respect. Eleanor sat through the memorial service, her face pale, her eyes dry. Her beloved grandmother had passed away a week ago, and while her family openly wept and shared stories, Eleanor felt a strange, chilling emptiness. She wanted to cry, to feel a profound sorrow, to release the ache in her chest, but the tears simply wouldn't come. She told herself she needed to be strong for everyone else, to hold it together. This unexpressed grief didn't vanish. It settled deep within her, a heavy, cold stone, creating a profound sense of isolation. She longed for catharsis, for the release that others found in their tears, but the invisible barrier around her emotions remained impenetrable, leaving her feeling like a silent witness to her own sorrow, utterly alone in its immense internal weight. This profound state of unexpressed grief, an immense internal burden held in stillness, finds a poignant parallel in the alligator's silent witness to its environment. Alligators can appear to simply be motionless observers of the world around them. They don't display overt signs of distress or sorrow in response to the loss of others in their group, or even to environmental changes. Their response to the harsh realities of their ecosystem is a stoic, almost unreactive presence, conserving energy. While they are powerful predators, their default state is often one of passive observation, absorbing information without outward emotional display. This silent, unreactive presence allows them to remain hidden, but it also paints a picture of immense, contained resilience, an internal processing that happens without external show, holding the weight of their world without apparent emotional tremor. The human experience of unexpressed grief directly mirrors the alligator's silent witness and contained emotional state. In human neurobiology, intense grief, when suppressed, can lead to prolonged activation of the stress response system, impacting the limbic system, emotions, and the hypothalamus, stress regulation. This can result in complicated grief, where the processing of loss is delayed or incomplete, leading to chronic sadness, numbness, or even physical symptoms. Psychologically, unexpressed grief often stems from a societal pressure to be strong, a fear of being overwhelmed by emotion, or a lack of safe spaces to express vulnerability. Evolutionary psychology suggests that while social mourning rituals are universal, some individuals may have a stronger instinct to internalize pain as a protective coping mechanism. However, when grief remains unexpressed, it becomes a heavy internal burden, hindering emotional healing and preventing healthy adaptation to loss. Just as the alligator silently bears the weight of its environment, a person with unexpressed grief carries an immense internal sorrow, unable to release the emotional pressure that will allow for healing and renewed life. Eleanor felt the heavy, cold stone of her unexpressed grief, the profound isolation it created within her. She was confronting the immense personal cost of this internal silence, the way it prevented her from truly mourning and moving forward. Would she continue to carry this immense silent sorrow, believing that outward strength was paramount until it consumed her from within? Or would she, like an alligator, despite its natural stoicism, sometimes vocalizing in deep rumbles that betray its presence, dare to allow her own tears, to vocalize her pain, to seek comfort in shared vulnerability, even if it felt weak or messy? Her instinct was to contain, to endure, to remain composed. But the profound ache, the yearning for release and genuine connection, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. She had to acknowledge that her strength was not just protecting her, but also suffocating her. The alligator, silent witness and contained, emotional state offer a profound metaphor for the human struggle with unexpressed grief. It teaches us that while stoicism might offer a temporary shield from overwhelming sorrow, an unchecked habit of internalizing grief can lead to profound isolation, prolonged suffering, and hindered healing. By understanding the primal resilience that drives the alligator's unreactive presence, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own emotional containment in times of loss. May we learn from the alligator to discern when our composure is helpful and when it is becoming a destructive barrier, and to understand that true healing lies not in the absence of tears, but in the courage to acknowledge, express, and ultimately release our grief, allowing the natural process of sorrow to cleanse and transform us, leading to a renewed capacity for connection and peace. James was known for his calm, collected demeanor. When faced with unexpected setbacks at work or personal frustrations, his expression rarely changed. His voice remained even. Colleagues admired his ability to stay cool under pressure. But beneath the surface, a storm often raged. He'd replay scenarios, analyze every slight, and feel a surge of intense emotions, which he meticulously controlled. He believed that showing any strong reaction was a sign of weakness, a loss of power. This pervasive habit of controlled reactions wasn't true calm. It was a constant, exhausting act of suppression, preventing genuine responses and leaving him feeling emotionally rigid, a tightly wound spring that never quite uncoiled, perpetually guarding against any emotional leakage. This pervasive habit of controlled reactions finds its most direct parallel in the alligator's calculated stillness. An alligator's primary hunting strategy involves remaining almost perfectly motionless for long periods, often for hours, until the precise moment to strike. This stillness is not passivity. It's a highly strategic and energy-efficient way to ambush prey. Every muscle is primed, every instinct is alert, but no overt movement is made until the opportune moment. They don't react impulsively to every ripple or distant sound. Their response is measured, contained, and unleashed only with immense force at the optimal time. This calculated stillness is a display of incredible self-control and predatory discipline, ensuring that when they finally act, it is with maximum impact, a silent accumulation of potential power. The human experience of controlled reactions directly mirrors the alligator's calculated stillness. In human neurobiology, the act of controlling emotional reactions involves significant activity in the prefrontal cortex, which works to inhibit spontaneous responses from the limbic system. This can be a learned coping mechanism, often developed in environments where emotional expression was punished or seen as dangerous. Psychologically, controlling reactions can stem from a desire for perceived strength, a fear of vulnerability, or a belief that showing emotion leads to negative consequences. Evolutionary psychology suggests that the ability to suppress impulsive reactions can be adaptive in complex social situations, allowing for strategic decision-making. However, when this control becomes chronic and rigid, it leads to emotional repression, inauthenticity in relationships, and an accumulation of unexpressed feelings that can eventually erupt in unhealthy ways. Just as the alligator's stillness is a contained power, a person with overly controlled reactions lives with immense internal pressure, constantly managing their emotional output, unable to truly relax and be spontaneous. James felt the immense internal pressure of his perfectly controlled facade, the exhausting effort of maintaining his composure. He was confronting the immense personal cost of this relentless self-management, the way it alienated him from his true feelings and prevented genuine connection. Would he continue to live in this state of rigid control, perpetually guarding against any emotional spill, forever disconnected from his own authentic responses? Or would he, like an alligator, despite its stillness, eventually making a powerful, decisive move, dare to allow more authentic, measured emotional responses to surface, risking the discomfort of vulnerability for the sake of genuine expression? His instinct was to contain, to be stoic, to appear strong. But the profound internal tension, the yearning for genuine connection, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. He had to acknowledge that his control was not just protecting him, but also suffocating him. The alligator is calculated. Stillness and contained power offer a profound metaphor for the human struggle with overly controlled emotional reactions. It teaches us that while composure is valuable, an unchecked habit of rigid emotional suppression can lead to profound internal tension, inauthenticity, and an inability to connect deeply. By understanding the primal discipline that drives the alligator's patient ambush, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own excessive emotional control. May we learn from the alligator to discern when our stillness is strategic and when it is becoming a suffocating prison, and to understand that true power lies not in the absence of emotion, but in the courage to acknowledge, regulate, and express our feelings authentically, allowing for genuine connection and a more flexible, resilient inner life. Maria's husband tried to discuss a difficult topic, expressing his hurt. But Maria's response was almost automatic, a blank stare, a slight shrug, and a quick change of subject. Later, when a close friend achieved a major success, Maria offered a perfunctory congratulation, her face devoid of genuine excitement. This pervasive emotional rigidity meant she struggled to shift her emotional state, to empathize, or to truly share in the joys and sorrows of others. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was as if her emotional pathways had become stiff, unyielding, unable to adapt to the nuanced demands of human interaction. She longed for emotional fluidity, for the ability to truly connect, but the ingrained habit of containment had made her responses predictable and unresponsive, leaving her feeling trapped in a world where feelings felt dangerous and her reactions were always guarded an impenetrable fortress against vulnerability. This pervasive emotional rigidity, an inability to adapt or yield in emotional display, finds a compelling parallel in the alligator's unyielding grip. Once an alligator clamps its jaws onto something, its grip is incredibly powerful and unwavering. It does not easily let go, nor does it typically display a wide range of nuanced emotional expressions in its hunting or defensive behaviors. Its response is often a powerful, direct, and unyielding application of force, rather than subtle shifts or emotional displays. This unyielding grip symbolizes an immense, concentrated power that, once engaged, is not easily released or altered. It's a testament to a creature that relies on brute force and unwavering commitment to its actions, without the flexibility of more expressive animals. For the alligator, emotional rigidity, in its own context, is about maintaining unwavering control and focus. The human experience of emotional rigidity directly mirrors the alligator's unyielding grip. In human neurobiology, emotional rigidity can be linked to a long-term suppression of the limbic system's spontaneous emotional responses, leading to a reduced capacity for emotional flexibility and empathy. It can be a consequence of chronic stress, trauma, or a personality style that prioritizes control and predictability over spontaneity and vulnerability. Psychologically, emotional rigidity often stems from a fear of being overwhelmed, a need to maintain an image of strength, or a belief that emotions are dangerous and must be strictly controlled. Evolutionary psychology suggests that a consistent, predictable response might have been adaptive in certain survival scenarios. However, when this becomes extreme, it leads to strained relationships, an inability to adapt to change, and a profound sense of isolation as genuine emotional exchange becomes impossible. Just as the alligator maintains an unyielding grip, a person with emotional rigidity holds their feelings in a constant, tight embrace, unable to relax or express the nuanced spectrum of human emotion. Maria felt the crushing weight of her own emotional rigidity, the silent wall that separated her from genuine connection. She was confronting the immense personal cost of this unwavering control, the way it impoverished her relationships and stifled her capacity for joy and empathy. Would she continue to live within this rigid emotional framework, forever unable to adapt or respond authentically, forever disconnected from the vibrant dance of human feeling? Or would she, like an alligator, despite its powerful grip, sometimes needing to open its jaws to breathe or to consume, dare to loosen her emotional hold to allow for more nuanced, flexible responses, risking the discomfort of vulnerability for the sake of deeper connection? Her instinct was to contain, to maintain control, to remain unyielding. But the profound loneliness, the yearning for genuine emotional connection, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. She had to acknowledge that her rigidity was not just protecting her, but also suffocating her. The alligator's unyielding grip and its powerful, yet inflexible nature offer a profound metaphor for the human struggle with emotional rigidity. It teaches us that while control can be valuable, an unchecked habit of maintaining an unyielding emotional stance can lead to profound isolation, strained relationships, and a diminished capacity for empathy and joy. By understanding the primal force that drives the alligator's unwavering focus, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own emotional inflexibility. May we learn from the alligator to discern when our control is productive and when it is becoming a rigid prison, and to understand that true emotional strength lies not in an unyielding grip, but in the courage to release, to adapt, and to allow for the natural flow of emotions, leading to more authentic connections and a richer, more adaptable inner life. Thomas had endured months of passive-aggressive comments from his neighbor, quiet insults, and subtle provocations. He said nothing, always maintaining a polite, distant facade. He rationalized it, telling himself it wasn't worth the conflict. But the pressure built, an unseen force accumulating deep within him. Then, one evening, after a particularly trivial slight, a misplaced trash can, Thomas exploded. His voice, usually calm, rose to a shout, unleashing a torrent of pent-up rage that shocked his neighbor and even himself. This delayed explosive release wasn't proportionate to the trigger. It was the culmination of months, even years, of unexpressed frustration, an emotional dam breaking with devastating force. He longed for healthy emotional expression, for the ability to address issues in the moment. But the ingrained habit of repression left him vulnerable to these destructive, Unpredictable outbursts, a silent threat waiting for the moment to erupt. This delayed explosive release, a sudden, powerful unleashing of contained energy, finds its most dramatic parallel in the alligator's sudden strike. Alligators are not typically aggressive animals in their daily behavior, often remaining still or moving slowly. However, when a perceived threat invades their territory, or when a prey animal comes within their striking range, their seemingly placid demeanor is instantly shattered by an incredible burst of speed and power. This sudden strike is not an impulsive lashing out. It's the culmination of patient waiting, of contained energy, and of an acute assessment of the moment. The power of the strike is immense, often disproportionate to the size of the initial trigger, reflecting the immense potential energy held in reserve. For the alligator, this delayed, powerful action is a highly effective, albeit terrifying survival strategy, a testament to the destructive force of unreleased, contained power when finally unleashed. The human experience of delayed explosive release directly mirrors the alligator's sudden strike. In human neurobiology, chronic emotional repression leads to an accumulation of emotional tension that can overwhelm the prefrontal cortex's inhibitory control. This emotional backlog can then be triggered by a minor event, leading to a disproportionate outburst. The amygdala, fear, anger center, can become highly sensitized, leading to an exaggerated response. Psychologically, this pattern often stems from a fear of expressing emotions in the moment, a belief that anger is unacceptable, or a lack of healthy coping mechanisms for emotional processing. Evolutionary psychology suggests that while immediate, uncontrolled aggression can be detrimental, a buildup of frustration to a decisive, explosive response might have been adaptive in certain high-stakes scenarios for our ancestors. However, when it becomes a recurring pattern, it leads to damaged relationships, regret, and a profound sense of losing control. Just as the alligator's sudden strike is a release of immense contained power, a person with delayed explosive release experiences a violent discharge of repressed emotions, often with devastating consequences for themselves and those around them. Thomas felt the shame and regret of his own explosive outburst, the bitter taste of emotions unleashed disproportionately. He was confronting the immense personal cost of this unpredictable pattern, the relationships it strained, and the internal chaos it created. Would he continue to live in this cycle of silent accumulation and sudden, destructive release, forever a victim to his own unmanaged emotions? Or would he, like an alligator, despite its powerful strike, sometimes choosing to slowly retreat when a threat is too great, dare to acknowledge and process his frustrations in the moment, in smaller, healthier doses, rather than waiting for an uncontrollable explosion? His instinct was to suppress, to avoid, to keep the peace. But the profound damage, the yearning for emotional mastery, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. He had to acknowledge that his containment was not just protecting him, but also setting him up for devastating, unavoidable collisions. The alligator's sudden strike and its immense, contained power offer a powerful and stark metaphor for the human struggle with delayed explosive emotional release. It teaches us that while emotional containment can be a short-term strategy, an unchecked habit of repressing feelings leads to a dangerous buildup of pressure, often culminating in disproportionate and destructive outbursts. By understanding the primal force that drives the alligator's ambush, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own pattern of emotional accumulation. May we learn from the alligator to discern when our silence is strategic and when it is becoming a precursor to destructive eruption, and to understand that true emotional resilience lies not in perpetually holding back, but in the courage to acknowledge, process, and express our feelings in healthy, timely ways, transforming a potential explosion into a force for constructive change and genuine emotional integrity.